Welcome back to Ghost Pirate Entertainment. I'm your host, Kanan Becker, and today we do another deep dive into Amazon Prime. And real quick before we get into this video, if you could do me a favor and hit that like button, because that really does help this channel out so much. Alright, so for those of you not familiar with this channel, once a week I go looking through one of the popular streaming platforms and come up with 10 horror movies to recommend for you guys. And this week, I jumped headfirst into Amazon Prime and came up with 10 horror movies that I think you will enjoy. And with that, let's get to the list. Alright, so kicking off this list is a movie called Reign of Fire.
A creature has been awakened that has lain dormant for millions of years. A species older than the dinosaurs and more terrifying than anything we could have imagined.
So Reign of Fire is a movie I remember going to see in theaters when it first dropped, and I've been a big fan of this movie ever since. It's strange to me though that it hasn't gotten more love over the years, especially considering it stars Matthew McConaughey as well as Christian Bale and Gerard Butler. Like, it's really got a stacked cast. They do a really damn good job in this movie as well, but for reasons I'm not clear on, this movie has really never gotten a lot of love. So the basic concept of this movie is in the future, people discover that dragons are a real entity. And it does it in a very cool way, almost like discovering aliens or whatever. This is ancient creatures that are way down in this cave. And the dragons just start attacking man and basically annihilate most of mankind. So it skips to this apocalyptic future where Christian Bale, as well as a few other survivors, are basically trying to survive.
These beasts live on ash. They feed on death. There's no middle ground. Not for them. Not for us.
And then Matthew McConaughey enters the picture. It's cool because they have some tech. They have tanks a little bit and things like that. But for the most part, they're just fighting against these dragons who breathe fire, but it's not just fire. It's actually like napalm. They're just annihilating humans. Humans have absolutely no chance against them in this movie. So it's just a very entertaining sci-fi action with horror elements kind of movie that I love very much, and I highly recommend it.
Reign of Fire.
Next up, we go to HH Holmes, America's first serial killer.
In 1895 Chicago, there lived a human monster. Torture chambers, secret passageways, vats of acid, and deadly vaults were just some of the horrific discoveries unearthed in the castle of HH Holmes.
So this is a documentary that I discovered quite a while back, and I've never really heard a lot of people talk about this documentary. And yet I know true crime is extremely popular, with Netflix having a lot of success with their documentaries like Night Stalker as well as others. But this one to me is right up there. And it's interesting because HH Holmes kind of flies under the radar. He's not talked about like you do Dahmer or these other famous Gacy, whatever, these other famous serial killers. But yet he's America's first, and he's way more horrific and prolific than any of these other ones you hear about all the time. So to me, if you're into true crime as well as just history, this is a very fascinating documentary. The story of HH Holmes and the murder house and everything that he did is just absolutely captivating, and this is one that I highly, highly recommend.
Waterfront Productions brings the true story of Dr. H.H. Holmes and his castle of horrors to the screen. H.H. Holmes, America's first serial killer.
Next up, we go to Lake Mungo.
I feel like something bad is going to happen to me. It hasn't reached me yet, but it's on its way.
The normally tranquil setting of Ararat's mountains.
So this is a creepy, terrifying mockumentary, found footage type of movie that is still flying somewhat under the radar. I have heard more and more about it over the years, but it still really is ignored a lot more than it really should be. Because as scary as this movie is and as haunting as this movie is, it should be talked about up there with some of the best ever as far as this type of subgenre of horror. So this is a ghost story of sorts. It's about this young teenage girl who drowns in a lake, and then mysterious stuff starts happening to her family, and it gets more and more creepy, twisted, and haunting. But then there's also some very interesting twists and turns that this movie takes towards the end that really kind of flip it on its head and turn it into something totally different than what it seems like it's gonna be. Either way though, this is just very unique and very interesting, as well as, I really believe, truly scary.
It hasn't reached me yet, but it's on its way. And it's getting closer.
Next up, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2.
What the hell's going on here? I'm the Lord of the Harvest.
Alright, so if you're a fan of the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre and you've never watched the sequel, well, first off, don't go into it expecting to see another Texas Chainsaw Massacre with the same kind of mood and energy and vibe, because this is very, very different. This is a dark, strange, creepy horror comedy of sorts. Very dark, humored kind of comedy. Something that is kind of disturbing in a weird way, just as much as the original, at least to me, but just in a very, very different way. Because the realism in the original is what made it so terrifying, and this doesn't really have that. But it has this strange underbelly, dark, kind of disgusting humor about it that is just as much disturbing, in my opinion.
I get too embarrassed to phone in my request. It's too disembodied, you know. But,
So I'm not gonna say that this is as good as the original by any means. It is very different though, so it's hard to even compare them. And it has a huge cult following. People really do love this movie. No matter what, I think it's a very entertaining movie, and if you're someone who is a diehard horror fan and you've never watched Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, then you really, really need to.
Chainsaw Massacre 2. The buzz is back.
Next up, we go to Rear Window.
This is the scene of the crime. A crime of passion, filmed in a way you have never seen before, and as no one else would dare attempt, but the screen's master of suspense.
So this is one of Alfred Hitchcock's greatest movies. Maybe not quite as famous as Psycho, but definitely up there with some of his best. For me, I absolutely love this one, but it is much less a horror movie and much more of a thriller mystery. But the basic idea of this movie is Jimmy Stewart has broken his leg and he's stuck in his apartment. He's a photographer, so he's bored in his little apartment. And yes, I'm sure he has TV and books and whatnot, but he's still bored. After this last year that we all had with the lockdown, I'm sure a lot of you can relate to that. Because I know, even with books, even with video games, even with movies, I was still bored out of my mind as well as extremely lonely. And both those things are really grinding at his character. And the way his apartment is set up out his rear window of his house, hence the name, he can see all these other brownstone apartments in New York City.
This is the apartment of a man named Jeffries, a news photographer whose beat used to be the world. Right now, his world has shrunk down to the size of this window.
So he's people watching basically. He starts to kind of follow the story of all these different neighbors. So this is a movie I could go on and on and on about, but I'm not here to do a full review. But just to sum it up for you guys, it turns into a murder mystery, and it is extremely captivating and just a really fun whodunit type of situation that has so many unique things about the way it was directed and filmed and shot. Just everything about this movie makes it extremely iconic. So if you've never checked it out, do yourself a favor and check it out. Next up, we go to the Reef.
Where are we heading?
Signet Reef.
What's there?
You'll see. We're here.
Wow.
So I recommend recommended this movie last week on a couple of the videos I did as well, but it's so good, and it's also available on Prime as well as Tubi, so I figured I would recommend it again here so that those of you that might have missed that video would get a chance to hear about it as well. But this is just an absolutely captivating, terrifying, real life type of situation movie. It's based on a true story, and I don't know how closely based on reality it is, but I know that it is definitely based on a true story.
This boat's gonna sink. There's land over there, and that's where I think we should be going.
I fish these waters, mate. I know it's out there. I'm not getting in the water.
But it's basically about this group of people that go out yachting. They're cruising around these islands and just swimming, having a good old time, and then a freak accident, some weather stuff happens, and it causes their boat to go down. So now they're stuck in the middle of the ocean where they're miles and miles and miles away from shore with no other choice but to swim for it. Even though they know there's shark-infested waters, they have no other choice but to swim for it.
Oh, it's a shark.
How big? It's big.
And this movie gets absolutely horrifying. Well, they're just being picked off by these sharks, and you're never sure if someone's gonna get injured or killed or eaten, whatever. And the way it's shot and the way they just focus on the characters, the dialogue, as well as the acting, everything just makes this very, very scary, and one that I think is one of the better shark movies ever made. And so I really do recommend you guys check this movie out.
Take me! Take me!
Next up, we go to Late Phases, Night of the Lone Wolf.
What the hell is that?
Where's your boy? Dolores! Dolores!
So this is a werewolf movie, but it has some unique twist on that whole story, lore, whatever, and it's what makes this movie, I think, really fun, and just for someone like me who's a big fan of werewolf movies, a can't miss. So it was just recently suggested that I check this out by a few of you guys, and I was like, all right, what the hell, I'll check it out, and I did, and I immediately fell in love with it. What makes this movie unique and really a lot of fun is that your main character, your main hero, so to speak, is an old man, and he's in this retirement home.
This has happened before.
Attacks like these happen all the time.
Something starts picking people off on a full moon every month, and he's an old war veteran, a wily war veteran, and even though he's a really old man, he's still a fucking savage. And he starts to kind of put two and two together, and believe it or not, he's like, I kind of think there's a werewolf. And so the whole story really is about him trying to outsmart, figure this situation out, figure out who's the werewolf, how to stop it, and all that kind of fun stuff that I'll leave up for you to find out because I don't want to ruin it. It is a little bit of a slow burn, but I still think there's enough action that it never gets boring, and it's one that I do think you should definitely check out. All right, next up we go to Pumpkinhead.
Should I be afraid?
It's coming!
And I've recommended Pumpkinhead numerous times on this channel because it's one of my favorite all-time movies. It is gotta be top 1 or 2 of my favorite creature designs, or at least in that top 5 of creature designs ever. Like, I absolutely love the way this creature looks. So I did do a full review of this movie last October, so if you want to hear me talk more about it, the link's up here. But it is, like I said, just one of my favorite movies ever. I love the premise of this guy whose son gets murdered and he wants revenge.
What do you want, Ed Harley? Say it. You're looking for vengeance. Vengeance. Say it.
And so he finds out about this creepy legend, this lore about this creature that you can call out to get vengeance for you, and how that kind of twists and turns on him and in a weird way goes against him. And I don't want to give it away in case somebody out there hasn't seen it, but this is just a beautifully done movie, and one that has always been underrated, and one that every time I seem to recommend it, people are like, oh man, it's not available anymore. Like, for whatever reason, these platforms don't do a great job, in my opinion, of letting you know when stuff's going to be there or not. And since I got to shoot these about a week or so in advance, a lot of times I'll recommend something and then bam, it's gone. But this time it just appeared on Prime, like just the other day. So I think it should definitely be there. Fingers crossed that it'll be there. I just love this movie so much. And so every time I see it on one of the platforms, it's one that I always gotta recommend.
It's gotta run its course. Now it begins. It begins.
Alright, so the next two movies I'm about to recommend kind of go together in a way, and you'll find out here in a second. So the first one I'm going to recommend is the original, the OG from 1973, The Wicker Man.
I am here to investigate the disappearance of a young girl. Where is Rowan Morrison?
If Rowan Morrison existed, we would know.
So don't get this confused with the more recent version starring Nicolas Cage, because they are very different, even though both basically tell the same story. And the story is that a cop goes to this island because he's looking for a missing girl. All hell breaks loose when he meets this weird cult of people and his life's in danger. It just gets creepy and twisted. So don't get the two of these confused, because even though the stories are very similar, they pretty much are the same. These are very, very different in tone, because the original is very creepy, very disturbing, very haunting, and has a very artful nature about it, whereas the more recent Nicolas Cage one is very goofy, very campy, silly, you know, the whole, oh, the bees,
Not the bees! Ah! Oh, my eyes! My eyes! Ah!
Yeah, they're very, very different. This original one, though, is such a classic, such a well-done movie, but sadly, a lot of younger people have never seen it because whenever they hear The Wicker Man, they just think of Nicolas Cage yelling out the bees. Don't get that twisted. Do yourself a favor, if you've never watched this, the original from '73, do yourself a favor and watch it, because it really, really is that good.
Where is Rowan Morrison?
Oh my God!
So this next one I'm going to recommend, like I said, goes with The Wicker Man, because like I like to a lot of times give you guys two that would be like for a great double feature weekend kind of thing. In this case, it's another one that I think is a great double feature, and that would be Midsomar.
Christian says you've got this special week planned.
It's sort of a crazy festival. Special ceremonies and dressing up.
That sounds fun.
This movie is a lot of ways like a relative of The Wicker Man. It has a very similar tone and energy and just style about it, and it is similar in a lot of ways because it does deal with a cult, and it deals with relationships and people and a lot of their ideas about sex and different cultures. So it deals with a lot of the same elements, and they both have this really haunting, disturbing undertone to both of them.
Welcome and happy midsummer. Skål!
They are both very artistically done as well, and just after they're over, both these movies really leave you with this haunting feeling, like this thing that clings to you long after you're done watching it. You're just mulling it over in your brain. So they're both a lot like that. They're both very slow burn. They're just beautifully done movies that are so iconic and so classic. And I understand that not everybody were big fans of Midsomar. I mean, it's A24. Not everybody loves that style of movie. You got to be into the more artsy type of stuff, the more haunting type of stuff, things that have a lot of dread and are very much slow burn. The original The Wicker Man is that way, as well as Midsomar. So I'm not saying this is for everyone, but if you enjoy artfully done, dread-filled, you know, just creepy, disturbing movies, and you've never seen Midsomar, you definitely need to. But even if you have, if you've never watched it back to back with the original The Wicker Man, then I think you really should do that, because it's surprising how similar in so many ways these two movies are. They both are different, but yet they are connected.
I was most excited for you to come.
Alright, so that's going to do it for me today. Please leave your comments down below. I'd love to hear if you guys plan to watch any of these on this list, or if you're a fan, or anything, really. I just love hearing from you guys. And also, if you could do me a favor and hit that subscribe button and ding that little bell, because that is the best way to keep track of this channel. And when I post videos like this, and I post videos like this at least 2 times every week, I also want to give a massive, huge thank you to my patrons, because their support means so much to me. And if you would like to find out more about becoming a patron, the link is down in the description. And like always, thank you so much for watching. Please crush that like button. And remember, guys, horror can be fun. I will see you guys next time.